Welcome learners in the third lecture of week 1. Today we will discuss changes during cooking and role of various agents. Have you ever noticed how do we get so many varieties in our plate? Yes, you guessed right. It's because of cooking. Cooking creates variety. At its most fundamental level, cooking represents transfer of energy, typically in the form of heat into food. This transfer triggers a cascade of reaction, structural and compositional modifications. Cooking is one of humanity's most significant cultural, scientific, and social practices. It not only makes food safe for consumption, but also transforms it into meals that are more palatable, economic, and often nutritionally enhanced. The process of cooking involves a remarkable range of physical, chemical, and biochemical changes that alter the composition of raw ingredients. These transformations depend on several factors, including the type of ingredient, the method of cooking, and the presence of various agents such as heat, water, acid, alkali, fats, and salts. By understanding these changes, we can appreciate cooking not merely as an art form, but also as an applied science where chemistry, biology, and physics converge. What are the changes during cooking? These changes are physical and chemical changes, biochemical and enzymatic changes, and several changes are brought about by various agents like heat, water, acids, alkali, salt, fermentation agents, additives, and spices. So let's start to study the changes in starch. When moist heat is applied to the starch, it undergoes the process of gelatinization. Starch granules do not dissolve readily in cold water, but they form a temporary suspension with the starch tending to settle out as soon as the mixture is allowed to stand. When heated at the temperature 74 to 88 degrees centigrade, the intramolecular hydrogen bonding is broken and the grains absorb water. So when moist heat is applied to the starch granules absorb water and swell, and it undergoes the process of gelatinization, which includes swelling of starch granules. The viscosity increases until a peak thickness is reached, and the translucency of mixture also increases. In general, these changes are described as gelatinization. The change transforms the temporary suspension into a more permanent one. In the starch molecule, two different types of chains may be distinguished: the linear chain termed as amylose and the branch chain amylopectin. Amylose is soluble in water, and presence of both types of chain decides the type of starch. Means how the starch differs from one another depends upon the length of the amylose and amylopectin chains, as well as the proportion of each type of starch chain present in it. The gelling ability of starch depends upon the amylose content, and a high amylopectin level lowers the ability of starch to form a satisfactory gel. For example, amylose percentage of waxy corn is 0, rice has 16, potato 20, and wheat 22. That means wheat has the maximum gelling capacity. This process can be explained as the chemical phenomena, association of the starch molecules with those of the water, since heating weakens the hydrogen bonding of water as also starch-starch molecules. The result is the penetration of water molecule between the two starch molecules. This process of gelatinization is vital in thickening sauces, cooking rice. The increase in viscosity of the heated starch mixture is caused by the action of enlarged starch granules bumping against each other, trapping the water and inhibiting its free flow. During the process of gelatinization, the starch granules rupture. In this process, the linear chain of amylose, they leach out of the starch granules and they form stronger bonds. Whereas the branch chain amylopectin remains within the starch granule. So there is development of three-dimensional structure that results in development of a gel with the amylose molecule forming a network that holds water in its mesh. And this process is called gelation. The rigidity of the starch mixture is increased. After the gelation, if the starch mixture continues to stand, retrogradation occurs, starch becoming less soluble as its original state is called retrogradation. Amylose undergoes more rapid retrogradation than amylopectin. Retrogradation of a starch brings about staling. As the amylose molecules pull together more tightly, the gel network shrinks and water is shed out of the gel. This process of weeping is called syneresis. So we see that by the application of moist heat, starch undergoes gelatinization, then gelation, then retrogradation and syneresis. In this picture, we can see the starch retrogradation in rice grain. First, raw rice, it undergoes that crystalline structure, then cooked rice, amorphous structure, and cooked rice plus then cooled, recrystallized structure. There are several factors which affect the process of gelatinization. First is temperature. A starch mixture will start to thicken somewhere between 70 to 88 degrees centigrade, but complete gelatinization will not occur until the mixture is close to or at the boiling point. This will vary with the type of starch and size of the grain. The gelatinization temperature ranges are the characteristic of starch and serves as an additional index for identification. Depending upon the variety and the storage conditions, gelatinization temperature varies. Other factor is size of the starch granules. The larger the size of the starch granules, they swell at a lower temperature. So gelatinization will be easy. Time of heating. Mixtures which are rapidly heated over a direct heat and then simmered for 1 minute form thicker paste than slowly heated ones. Concentration also affects the process of gelatinization. More concentrated dispersions exhibit higher viscosity due to larger number of granules that can swell early during the process of gelatinization. The other factor is type of starch. Like wheat starch gelatinizes earlier than other grain starches. Wax corn starch lacks amylase and thus forms no gel. Brown flour exhibits low thickening as some starch gets converted to dextrin. Gelling ability of starch depends on the amylase content, and high amylopectin lower the ability to form a satisfactory gel. Stirring also affects the process of gelatinization. Stirring is desirable for uniform consistency, but excessive agitation ruptures the granules, decreasing viscosity. Sugar also affects the process of gelatinization. Sugar competes for water and so limits the swelling of the starch granules. Thus, thickness of the cooled product is reduced. That means sugar elevates gelatinization temperature. The recipes in which thickness is required, sugar is added after the starch is cooked. Even in a recipe which needs more sugar, other factor is acid, which affects the process of gelatinization. Acid has a catalytic influence on hydrolysis of starch to dextrin and fragmentation of granules, and therefore reduces the thickness of the hot paste and firmness of the cold. Acid and heat catalyze hydrolysis of starch to dextrin. Acid hydrolyzes starch when it is boiled, hydrates at lower temperature than the unmodified starch. Fats and proteins also delay the hydration and lower the rate of viscosity development. The presence of fats and proteins coat the starch granules and thereby delay hydration and lower the rate of viscosity development. This was all about the process when the starch undergoes gelatinization in the presence of moist heat. But what happens when the starch is subjected to dry heat? Then the process is called dextrinization. Starch is hydrolyzed to simpler form dextrin that is easily digested. When dissolved in water, they impart a sweet taste. Dextrin has lower thickening power, and due to dextrinization, there is development of burnt roasted flavor because of non-enzymatic browning. Dextrinization leads to formation of pyrodexin, and dry dextrins occur in the crust of baked products. Now we will see what are the changes in sugar. Direct heating of sugars greater than 160 degrees centigrade results in dehydration, isomerization and polymerization, leading to formation of unsaturated polymers with brown color. With the proper use of catalyst, we can use this as flavoring agent or coloring caramel. If we want it for flavoring purpose, then sucrose in concentrated syrup is caramelized, and for the manufacture of caramel colors, glucose syrup treated with dilute sulfuric acid and neutralized with ammonia are used, as they are used in beverages. Sugar undergoes hydrolysis with acid or enzyme, and then it is converted into mixture of glucose and fructose called invert sugar. Invert sugar can prevent or help the control the degree of sucrose crystallization because glucose and fructose crystallize more slowly than sucrose. Also, because a mixture of invert sugar and sucrose has greater solubility in water than sucrose. Thus, the use of invert sugar in candy preparation can alter these properties. Invert sugar, apart from limiting the amount of crystallization of sucrose, encourages the formation of small crystals, and this gives smoothness to candy. So this phenomena is used in preparation of candies. Invert sugar also acts like a natural moisture keeper. So when we want to the candy that it should not become overtly brittle or it should not dry out, then the hygroscopicity of invert sugar helps prevent these problems. Invert sugar is sweeter than sucrose and thus has an effect upon the sweetness of candy also. The other change which is observed in sugar is crystallization. The way sugar crystallizes from its solution is of great importance in the preparation of confections and other sugar containing products. Fairly large quantities of sugar are soluble in water at room temperature and the amount dissolved increases with temperature. The amount of sugar dissolved in boiling water is about twice the amount of that dissolved at room temperature in the same volume of water. When a solution of sugar saturated at the boiling point of water is cooled, crystals of sugar start forming. The size of these crystals depend on how fast tiny crystals form or how quickly these tiny crystals grow. So what is the importance of these phenomena? In the preparation of candy, the size of the crystals formed and the speed of crystallization is very important in achieving the right structure. In candy making, controlling how fast and how big sugar crystal form is key to getting the right texture. If the crystallization is fast, large crystals will form and candy will feel grainy or sandy. Whereas, if the process of crystallization is slow, small crystals will form and that will give a smooth and creamy texture to the candy. To slow down caramelization and make smoother candy, ingredients like cream of tartar, lemon juice or vinegar are added. They cause a chemical change that prevents crystal from forming too quickly. Fats like butter stop them from growing larger. This is how smooth candies and non-crystalline candies are made. It was all about changes in sugar. We have seen that there is crystallization, caramelization and hydrolysis in sugar by the application of heat. Next we come to changes in protein. Proteins are important molecules found in food like meat, egg and beans. When we cook these foods, the proteins inside them changes. In their natural state, proteins have a specific three-dimensional shape. They are folded tightly and are held together by weak bonds. When heat or acids are applied, these weak bonds break and the proteins unfold. This process is called denaturation of protein. One very common example of denaturation is the boiling of eggs. Raw egg white is clear, which turns white and solid when boiled. The protein's structure changes, and so do the properties like texture and solubility also change. Because of denaturation, digestion of protein becomes easier. The unfolded protein allows enzymes to break it down more easily. The protein may lose its normal functions like enzyme or hormone activity, and it often becomes less soluble. Sometimes denaturation can be reversed, called renaturation, if the process isn't too harsh, especially for smaller proteins. But often it's permanent. Heat is the main cause. For every 10-degree increase in temperature, denaturation happens about 600 times faster. Acids, salts, shaking, stirring, or high pressure can also cause it. Even exposure to air or ultraviolet light can denature proteins. How these properties are used in food processing? Denaturation is sometimes useful. It gives food new textures and appearance, like cooked meat or boiled egg. But in some foods like milk, this process of denaturation needs to be avoided, like during pasteurization or drying of milk, because we want to keep the proteins in their natural form. The other change which is found in protein is coagulation. Denaturation often progresses into coagulation, a process where denatured proteins aggregate and forms gels or solid matrices. Custards, cheese, and curdled milk are familiar examples of this phenomena. As we learned that denaturation is a process in which the protein completely unfolds and assumes a random coil structure, in which state the protein molecules radically form aggregates. This process is called coagulation. The other change which is found in protein, and it is most importantly used in culinary practices, is Maillard reaction. It is a complex series of reactions in which proteins reacts with reducing sugar and gives brown pigment and flavor molecules, melanoidins. And this reaction occurs at temperature between 140 degree and 165 degree centigrade. This reaction produces melanoidins and a wide array of volatile compounds that contribute to characteristic aromas and brown surface of roasted meats, baked bread, and grilled vegetables. The Maillard reaction is actually a complex group of many reactions. The set of various reactions sugar amines undergo resulting in browning is known as Maillard reaction. And the development of brown color is due to non-enzymatic browning. Changes in lipids. Lipids also undergo various changes due to application of heat. Melting and softening is one of them. Solid fats melt, lubricating food and influencing texture. Unsaturated fats undergo auto-oxidation when exposed to oxygen and heat, producing rancid flavors and potentially harmful compounds. In deep frying, triglycerides break down into free fatty acids and glycerol and acrolein. And fats also act as solvents for many aromatic compounds carrying flavors. We can see here the decomposition mechanism of triglycerides. This diagram demonstrates a chain of events beginning with hydrolysis and pyrolysis, leading to glycerol and free fatty acid breakdown, and culminating into a toxic compound of rancid flavor and deteriorating cooking quality. Understanding this is important for maintaining the safe cooking practices, ensuring oils are used within their stability limit and not subjected to repeated overheating. Acrolein is a highly toxic and irritating compound formed when glycerol, a component of triglyceride, undergoes thermal decomposition at high temperature. It is a volatile aldehyde with a pungent odor commonly released when cooking oils are overheated to their smoking point. One of the major harmful effects of acrolein is its respiratory toxicity. Even at a very low concentration, inhalation causes irritation of the nose, throat, and lungs, leading to coughing, burning sensations, chest tightness, and difficulty in breathing. Prolonged or high exposure can result in bronchospasm, pulmonary edema, and worsening of chronic lung conditions such as asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Acrolein is also a strong eye and skin irritant. On a cellular level, acrolein induces oxidative stress and inflammation, which can damage DNA and proteins. Environmentally, acrolein is toxic to aquatic organisms. In food context, the presence of acrolein signals oil deterioration. Overheated or reused oils not only degrade food quality but also expose consumers to harmful vapors. This scientific pathway underscores the need for fresh oils in food preparation and helps explain why deteriorated fats and oils foam, darken, and emit unpleasant odors. Vitamins and minerals also undergo some changes during cooking. Like heat-sensitive vitamins C and B complex degrade with prolonged heating or leaching into water. Minerals are generally heat stable, but losses occur through leaching into cooking liquids. Pigments also undergo some changes, like in acidic medium, chlorophyll loses magnesium and it turns olive green because of pheophytin. Under alkaline conditions, it retains brightness but may degrade nutrients. Carotenoids, relatively they are heat stable but susceptible to oxidation. Anthocyanins are highly pH sensitive. They change from red in acid to blue in alkaline environments. Betalains found in beets are degraded by heat and oxidation. There are several changes brought about by enzymes. Like in blanching of vegetables, the enzymes are deactivated due to heat, and the keeping quality is enhanced. And the food quality is also improved. Some enzymes like papain, bromelain, and fixin tenderize meats. Sometimes instead of stopping enzymes, we use them to improve food texture, flavor, or tenderness. Like in meat, these enzymes break down tough muscles, protein, and connective tissues, making the meat softer and easier to chew. Various other agents which bring about change during cooking are heat, promotes Maillard reaction, gelatinization, denaturation. Water, which is essential for gelatinization, hydrolysis, and nutrient leaching. Acids promote coagulation, promote enzymatic browning. Bases soften cellulose, accelerate Maillard browning. Salts modify osmotic balance and affect protein solubility. Additives and spices provide antioxidants and essential oils contributing to aroma. In this table, we can see the cooking transformations and along with the physical and chemical changes. Like in boiled rice, grains absorb water, swell and soften, and then this results in chemical change of partial starch breakdown, digestibility increases, and the rice becomes fluffy, soft and easy to digest. So, the nutritional implications of cooking is improved digestibility, destruction of anti-nutritional factors. There are several factors present in cereals and pulses called anti-nutritional. We will discuss in detail about these anti-nutritional factors when discussing about pulses. Cooking profoundly affects the nutrient composition, digestibility and bioavailability of food. In the raw egg, avidin binds with biotin and makes it unavailable to the body. When we cook the egg, that biotin becomes available to the body. So, it is an example of how cooking increases the bioavailability of certain nutrients. Fats and energy content also changes, like frying or using oil can raise the caloric value of the food. Vitamins like B and C, which are heat sensitive, they are lost during cooking. Appearance, aroma, flavor and texture of the food also changes because of the cooking. Color changes. We have seen how it changes in Maillard reaction or due to caramelization. Flavor and aroma development and texture modification because of the softening of the plant tissues or coagulation of animal proteins. Visual appearance also changes. Cooking improves the presentation through changes in gloss, volume or consistency. Excess heat also brings undesirable textures and loss of flavor or color. Bread making, vegetable cooking, frying, these are some case studies of cooking transformation. So, we can conclude that cooking is an intricate interplay of physics, chemistry and biology. Heat, water, acid, bases, salts, fats acts as agent that brings about transformation in food molecules, creating palatability, nutritious and safe meals. Sometimes cooking can lead to nutrient loss, but it enhances the digestibility, flavor and safety. So, a scientific understanding of these processes not only benefits culinary arts, but also nutrition science and food technology. So, takeaway from today's lecture is, studying changes in cooking is crucial for understanding the chemical and physical transformations that improve food safety, digestibility and sensory qualities. After going through this lecture, can you think about some more case studies of cooking transformation? Thank you.